This is the worst car ever made, from a country that doesn't even exist anymore. And it's right here in my garage, completely unmodified in all of its glory. Well, mostly unmodified. During the filming of other episodes of the Yugo series, the engine blew 3 times. So now, thanks to your support, especially on Patreon, we're finally able to swap out this for something more exciting. So the first step was to figure out the plan. I wanted to get something bigger, unique, and with more potential, as well as something that will give us an ability to add some fun spice to it. And let me tell you that the engine block is not the biggest surprise in this entire engine swap project. Trust me, you will see what I mean. So watch me show you how did we get there. It took me a while to source all the parts, and I really couldn't wait for the delivery and the unboxing. But first we had to prepare the garage by moving the Yugo out of the way somehow, as well as installing the TV that would display all the supporters' names. The TV install was easy, except the little part that got stuck up there, but we don't talk about it. And it was also pretty easy to move the Yugo, despite the fact that it doesn't run anymore. We just simply lifted it by hand and moved it over.
Dude, look at me turn the Yugo! Celebratory. A bunch of dust just flew.
The first best thing about this unboxing was perhaps my friend's reaction when he saw the engine parts.
Wiseco pistons? Forged? Made in Japan? Dude, oh!
And the second best part was the fact that the pallet arrived broken, and pretty much all the fragile items were kept in one piece thanks to a single nail holding it all together. And the fact that the engine block arrived looking even worse than I expected, because it spent so many years sitting in a warehouse with no one taking care of it. But don't let the looks deceive you, because the important part is what we can do with it. And we actually fully restored it as well, and I will make sure to show it to you in this video. But first the unboxing. The other parts looked very nice, because they were either completely new or relatively new.
Oh, here's the new head.
This is the performance head.
This is the cutest little clutch I've ever seen.
Aww. I found a solution to the cooling issue. You know how the car overheats a lot?
Yeah. That's an industrial kitchen fan.
Yeah. With all parts being unboxed, it was time to put everything together.
Okay, it's actually not gonna fall.
The moment I touch it with my Midas touch, Midas James touch.
That's really not that much holding it on.
Yes. There's a saying, you go, the car stays. And you know how I mentioned that some parts were relatively new? This is what I meant by that. Oh no. Oh my god, what is this? What is this? This is supposed to be brand new. The ain't lying, it's not used. But calling it new is a bit of a stretch. At some point, we encountered our first issue. We couldn't find one crucial part that would allow us to assemble the engine.
I hope they didn't send us the piston heads without any connecting rods.
The way they packed it, it's hard to tell what contains something and what doesn't. It's like a Kinder Surprise egg, except sometimes you get nothing. I feel like there's more. I think I found additional parts.
I wonder what's in there.
Probably more paper. And upon checking every single package, we came to the realization that I simply forgot to order it. I was told it will take 2 days to get the part, so we decided to use those days to fully restore the iron block in meantime.
Ooh.
The Yugo curse continues.
It smacked my finger and all I got out of that was rust.
You sure do look like you need help.
I had to pick it up from the most awkward position.
Oof. 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 Oof.
Perfect. It stays.
So how do you turn this into this? Simply put, you need some cleaning solution and a toothbrush. So we decided to put the engine on a crane and dip it in the solution first.
Should I flip it upside down or just leave it as is?
Probably take out the oil pan, yeah. You never know what's inside.
You want to get that Geiger counter?
Is that a frog? It looks like a frog that just got run over. Get a glove, man. You gotta get it. This is so rare, you get to name it. So I just realized I put my name over here.
That's gonna be on the bottom.
That's just gonna be at the bottom. Nobody will see it.
Smart man. 300 IQ. I'm usually pretty good at putting it in.
Oh, that's what she said. Wait.
Wait.
It actually didn't take me long to prepare the solution as well as set up the crane, but I just want to make it clear that I will try my best to not mess up your name when I put it on the car or the crane if you're a Patreon supporter or contributed a different way. Not in the frog pan, not in the frog. Oh, no.
That's not a glove. Hello, Mr. Froggy.
Don't talk to it. So before dipping the engine in the solution, I decided to test it out on a smaller part, and the result was absolutely hilarious. It'd be hilarious if one side turns out to be like completely polished while the rest is just all rusted out. Oh my lord. No way.
I heard screaming. What happened?
Look at this.
God.
I left it in there for too long by an accident.
What do you mean too long? That's just enough.
So we left the engine in the solution and decided to get some food. And by the time we came back, the solution loosened up all the rust. So all there was left to do is a lot of scrubbing.
Ooh. We're good.
My heart might have just skipped a beat.
Dude, that actually looks super nice.
There's probably gonna be some interesting names like Angry Tomato. That one dude. So after a lot of scrubbing, the engine's look was completely unrecognizable from its former state. And before going to the next stage, we decided to drain the solution first, and that went pretty well. It's an exhaust?
I think you got it the wrong way.
I'm not the one who assembled this thing last. They actually plugged into the exhaust. That could have been a disaster, man. The rest of the process went well, by the most part. It got too excited.
And I look up and I see Grandma MP40.
And before applying the paint to the engine, we decided to give it a bit more polish. All the extra polishing was absolutely worth it, and it made the final paint job look absolutely amazing. So all there was left for the engine is to actually assemble it. Some obscure parts are extremely rare to find online, so we decided to reuse them from the old engine. And that's when we discovered something absolutely insane. You know how people joke that this car is being held together with hopes and dreams? Well, turns out it almost literally was. What's up? Was there... Wait, please don't tell me there was nothing on the other side.
There was nothing there.
Are you actually serious? Yes. So the entire engine was being held together at the mercy of a single bolt.
Yeah, so the bracket's supposed to have a nut on the other side that holds it.
Yeah, so the entire thing was legitimately at the mercy of a single bolt. The entire engine assembly was being held together with a single bolt, and the nut was missing.
And the tensioner bolt's also loose.
Somehow the entire assembly managed to stay together instead of grenading itself while I was driving the car. And the best part is that you can't actually tell how long we've been driving like this. It could be a day, a week, a month, or even years.
Please, if you have another Yugo, just kill it. It doesn't want to live.
Yeah, please kill it so mine goes up in value. If you think that was bad, you should see the rest of the car. Wait, that's the coolant? Yeah. Oh, hell nah! Brother, that's a biohazard down there. I like how it goes, stops, and then goes more. How much coolant is in this thing? It's like, where was all this coolant when I needed it?
How did it have this much and overheat still?
It's trapped somewhere. That rust has been there for so long, it built a house. Guy goes to a gas station and tells the cashier, I would like to buy a fuel cup for a Yugo. The cashier says, fair deal. Despite all the issues, we managed to pull out the engine just fine. And upon the assembly of the new engine, we discovered a huge problem. The pistons, which are one of the most important parts of the engine, would not go in.
We're encountering like a little issue right now. It doesn't seem like the pistons are going in.
Do you guys have a box of Wiseco pistons sitting there by chance?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay, those are absolutely overboard pistons.
Okay.
You gotta send that block to a machine shop. Yeah.
As it turns out, the pistons were just a hair too big, so the engine needs to be bored out. Or in other words, the holes need to be a bit bigger. And it has to be done with such precision that you can't really do it at home. So we sent it to a machine shop that can do it at a micro level precision. And while waiting for the engine block to be back, I decided to use that time to clean the engine bay. And in my opinion, it turned out pretty nice. I also cleaned some of the other parts, but we'll get back to that later. Eventually we got our engine block back, but there was one little issue. Due to the machining process, the paint got chipped. And since we couldn't just spray it over, we had to hand paint the whole thing again. And at the end, it ended up looking even better than before. What didn't look pretty, however, was the gearbox, aka the transmission. I'll keep it simple, the whole thing was literally falling apart. In fact, some of the brackets were cracked and all of the gears were shaved. There were also dozens if not hundreds of other obscure parts that were broken, and every time I would find a new broken part, I would need to order it from a country you probably even haven't heard of, which I hope explains why it's been taking so long to make this video. It was impossible to fully fix everything, but it didn't stop us from trying, as we simply wanted everything to work a little bit reliably, at least without any unexpected fires. And when you hear me say that, knowing this car, you might be expecting some foreshadowing. With all that being said, we finally managed to put the engine and gearbox inside the car, which finally allows me to show you something special. This is Holy Sniper EFI 2300 self-tuning 2-barrel EFI system master kit, shiny. Or in other words, funky carburetor. And the simplest analogy I can give to somebody who doesn't know much about cars, it's like putting a modern top-of-the-line graphics card in your grandma's computer from 20 years ago. The reason I chose to do this is simple, unsafe but fun. New hats available now. Buy, consume, spend your money. Real talk, the real reason I wanted to do this is because it's never been attempted before. Is it stupid? Yes. Is it impractical? Probably also yes. Is it awesome? You will be the judge. But the answer is yes, it's absolutely awesome. And now that everything is prepared, it was finally time to assemble the entire thing. And that's when we encountered another problem. The intake manifold, which is car's equivalent of a breathing tube, had a very obscure size, and the information about it was extremely inconsistent online, presumably because there were multiple versions of it, which were all different in different countries during different years. So I went to every junkyard in the state of Nevada to try and see if I can find a part, and to my surprise, there were no compatible cars whatsoever, presumably because people are actively searching for them, or simply because the cars were so bad they couldn't even make it to the junkyard junkyards, so the only option left was to order one online. And unfortunately it was very expensive because the intake manifold we needed was the same one that was used in an Italian sports car, but only the Australian variant that was only sold in Australia and not Italy, US and the rest of Europe, because for some reason that particular manifold is better than the rest and supposedly has a way better bracket design, which turned out to be false as the plate design is exactly just like the rest and is extremely obscure. And due to its obscurity, there are no adapter plates that you could use, since it's not just about downsizing or upsizing, it's also about securing it all in place. So it has to be custom made, essentially from scratch, which is very expensive, very time consuming and requires a lot of knowledge. But then I realized something. What if we buy two universal plates, modify them and then sandwich them together? We can bolt down the bottom part to the intake manifold and we can bolt the top part to the system itself. Is it ridiculous? Absolutely. But realistically, we had no other options and it was worth a try, so we began wrenching. It was a little complicated to put it all together, but we managed to set it all up. And we still need to install a bunch of other stuff to make sure that it can actually run, but on a concept level, it definitely works. And if there's one thing for sure, it looks very promising. What doesn't look promising, however, is the weather. I live in the desert, and it gets really hot during summer. And my cameras began to overheat after a few minutes of use. But fortunately, I had a plan. This is an all-in-one water cooler designed for pretty powerful computer systems. Except instead of using CPU, I just attached it to a camera, and then I hooked it all up to a small power bank powering the entire thing. And you know what's the best part? It actually works! And all there was left is to install the fuel pump as well as the new brakes before we could put the car back on its wheels. Technically there were a couple of other small things we had to do, but overall we managed to put the car back on its wheels, during which we made a very interesting discovery.
This is what was holding the rear wheel together.
It actually increases the structural integrity of the car.
As if there is any to begin with.
Nonetheless, after many months, the car was finally back on its wheels, and that's when we encountered a huge problem.
Stuck in gear.
The car was completely stuck in gear, which in other words makes it inoperable. In order for us to figure out what's causing the issue and fix it, we have to take the entire gearbox out. You know what's the worst part? Since the engine is mounted sideways, it makes it very difficult to take out the gearbox without taking out pretty much everything together. We were just a hair away from starting the car for the first time, but we had no choice. And before pulling out the gearbox, we decided to check the electrical.
Turn it on, please.
Takes time.
That worked.
We found out that there's an electrical short somewhere in the car, but that quickly became a problem for future us, as the electrical work was a complete mess and it didn't cause any major issues. By the looks of it, everything worked fine, and the only problem was that the brake lights were always turned on, so it was time to take out the gearbox.
Scuba gang, time to solve a mystery. What killed the gearbox? Was it always this dented?
Yeah.
By design or by...
I don't think it was intentional.
Oh my lord.
With everything out, it's good. If there's no gears in there, no problem.
Bluetooth gearbox.
While my buddy was busy assembling the gearbox, I managed to install the bug catcher.
Zip ties.
It was a little bit tricky as it was designed for bigger engines and it was never even meant to be mounted sideways, but I wanted to do it for a very long time as I think it looks absolutely hilarious. And by the time I was done, I think we figured out the potential cause why the gearbox was getting stuck in gear.
Late reporter James on duty. Turns out a certain bearing was missing, and I think we found the criminal.
So we reassembled the entire gearbox and put it back in the car, and all there was left to start the car for the first time was to put it back on its wheels. At least that's what we thought, as the car got stuck in gear again, but only after we installed the gearbox, so we were forced to take out everything again, which is not fun at all.
I am going to be the person that is going to be under the gearbox. You're going to be the person calling the ambulance.
But luckily we finally narrowed down the actual reason why it was getting stuck.
Turns out there's a difference between 3 of these springs that are suspiciously colored a different color, like a different element. And turns out it actually matters which spring was used where, because one of them is used for reverse gear, the other one is, according to the internet, is uncolored, but it's looking more like red. You know, it's green, red, and blue. And then the other one was used for one of the gears. I don't know in which order, we're looking it up right now, but I think that was causing the issue. These little springs were the reason why the gearbox, this entire assembly, was busted. The difference in these springs is ridiculous.
It's nothing.
It was kind of our fault that we missed this, but I think it's a pretty easy mistake to make as the repair manual is in black and white, and as far as I know, the colored versions do not exist. The gearbox would no longer get stuck in gear, so we finally put the Yugo back on its wheels in order to start it for the first time. Since we wanted the car to start on the first try, we decided to temporarily replace the bug catcher with a big filter, as it would minimize the points of failure, and to be quite honest, I kind of like the way it turned out. We hooked everything up, refilled all the fluids, did some small miscellaneous stuff, and began preparing the ECU.
Something popped. I smell a lot of fuel.
Which line popped? It's one of the ones on the bottom.
Oh my god. Yeah, it's a good thing it popped now.
Fortunately, it was not a big deal, as the reason why the line popped was because we forgot to tighten the clamp, so we fixed it in no time. And it was finally time to start the car for the first time. But it didn't work, so we tried it again. No matter how much we would try, it just wouldn't start. We spent many hours trying to get the car to work, to the point where my cameras ran out of storage. We tried to do different adjustments electronically and mechanically, but all we would get is a lot of fuel and no spark. We began to suspect that it might be the ignition coil, so we decided to use the old one from the Yugo instead of a new one. And surprisingly, it actually helped. It still wouldn't start, but at least it would crank better. The main issue was the fact that the engine was getting flooded with fuel, and we began to suspect that it might be the sandwich plates, as they were hollow on the inside and might have prevented the fuel from getting in the right place, thus leaving some cylinders empty and the other ones flooded with fuel. But despite our best efforts to modify the plate, it still didn't help. We spent weeks trying to get the engine to work. We tried everything from spark plugs to different fuel ratios. I even spent over 10 hours of my time trying to design a custom adapter plate with the most optimal fuel flow, so I could 3D print it, which took another 7 hours for each iteration. Every time we would try something new, we would get better results, but it just simply wouldn't start. We spent many weeks just trying to get the engine to run. When it comes to stuff like this, there are thousands of reasons why it could be happening, but we managed to narrow down almost 100% of all possibilities, which left us with only one reason. The new engine was way too big for our starter motor, but the issue was that our configuration was really unusual. We ended up going through 3 different starter motors, and unfortunately none of them worked. In fact, one of the starter motors that we had delivered was not properly grounded, so it blew up inside my engine bay, which was absolutely terrible, but at least it didn't blow up in my face. But truth be told, it was extremely demotivating, as I didn't want to disappoint anybody after such a long wait. It reached the point where I maxed out my credit card, as I was still doing everything out of my pocket while making absolutely no money off YouTube, because my YouTube network would not be paying me. But despite the financial struggles and me being in a massive debt, I decided to spend my final $50 on a starter I found on eBay, just to give it a very last try.
Almost.
So here's the thing, it was more than just a starter. Turns out the fuel lines of the car were not properly pressurized due to a very obscure and dated design. And I found it out through this wonderful contraption that consists of a Home Depot bucket, 1 gallon of racing fuel that pretty much cost as much as liquid gold, and a fuel pump from a Hellcat. Yes, that Hellcat. Don't ask me why I had one laying around, because the answer is gonna be the usual. Unsafe but fun. So I called my friend, jumped around in excitement, and promptly went to bed, because I spent 3 days in a row in my garage trying to get the car running. The next day we did some modifications, and now the car idles without any issues. Well, almost without any issues.
Is it the... Oh. That's fire.
Yeah, we still got a lot of stuff to do. Truth be told, this project has been more than just about the car to me. Working on it almost every day for months has been a form of escapism, and after a series of unfortunate events, this video series almost ended on a sad note. But I kept on going, trying my best to make it work. I've been doing all of this out of my pocket, and every time something goes wrong, it puts a financial dent. As I mentioned earlier in the video, my network has been essentially stealing money from me this year, and as a result, I've been living paycheck to paycheck of sponsors and people's donations. I didn't get to show a lot of issues of different severity, but I'll make sure to feature them on Patreon or live streams. If you want to support the channel, check out the Patreon and Patreon store below, or buy one of these shirts and hats we made. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you soon in the next one.